Okay, welcome back. We're on page 610 talking about the causes of maintenance. Here are the things that would likely create problems for you where you would have to go in and do some maintenance. Now, how you perform maintenance. Let's say, okay, something happened and I need to go in there. And so there's some techniques that you can use for doing these upgrades. And here's a little chart basically talking about the how much disruption is going to happen when you make like a software change. So a slipstream upgrade is one where I actually just meld it into the current running operation and perhaps no one even notices. Okay. The next one up is a patch, where I actually give you a file and you install this thing, and most likely the patch is just going to fix bugs. It's probably not going to have any new features. So there's nothing more to learn. It's not going to be a new menu item where somebody says, where'd that come from? A release, well then yeah, you're probably going to have new features and a new menu item that no one's ever seen before. So perhaps they need to have some training to go through this. And then the new version, well, that could be very disruptive. It could be like a new database requirement or, new fields in the database and lots of stuff, and perhaps, completely different user interface. So the amount of effort it takes for the users to actually absorb that change kind of goes up. So this is actually a pretty cool little chart talking about the kinds of changes that you might expect. They talk about a request for maintenance form. I like this. This basically is a way to make sure that the person who's requesting this has some sort of an idea of what they're asking. Because if you don't have a formal system that goes in for approval, they'll say, well, I think it needs to do this. And you'll get it and go, well, that's going to cost us like $10 million to add this feature that only this one user will ever use. We ain't doing it. So you need to have some sort of a gate, a filter, some sort of a person that says, I approve or disapprove. And when they approve and disapprove these things, it's going to have to come along with a budget. It's going to say, yes, I approve this change, and it's going to cost $10,000 to make it. One without the other isn't going to work. I can't just say, yes, this is approved, and not provide you any money to do it. So this estimated time and cost part of this maintenance request is good. And I will tell you that a lot of people make this is kind of silly, but just bear with me. A lot of people make this very tough. They'll say users can't submit a maintenance request. You have to send it through your supervisor. And this is deliberate. It's designed to minimize the number of changes. I know, it sounds dumb, but I'm just telling you that some people do that just to make sure that doesn't happen. Before we leave that section, let's talk about the consequences of a bad design. So let's say you've got a system in place and it was designed poorly, and therefore I'm just being flooded with maintenance requests to get things back to the way they actually should have been on day one. Okay, this is a big business, so maybe you didn't do a very good job at identifying the problem or identifying the requirements or coming up with the specification. Maybe you flunked the first 3 phases and you went ahead and built this system thinking that it's going to be miraculous and going to increase your profit by 20%, and then you realize that it didn't do anything to your profit margin at all. So you start flooding the system full of change requests. There becomes a point where a poor design is probably going to end up costing you more than the changes. It's almost to the point where if you get flooded with a bunch of fundamental changes, okay, it needs to be able to do this, and you go, wow, I thought that was in the original requirements. Well, yeah, but it didn't do a very good job of it. That's the point where you need to stop and say, this really isn't a maintenance request. This is a request to redesign the whole system. So some things you can take as a maintenance request and say, well, sure, we'll throw that into the next release. And others, it's going to be like, look, we just need to start over. Let's go back to the drawing board. What problem are we trying to solve? What are the requirements this thing has? Go back to the beginning and just start over. It sounds disruptive, but I have seen people who doggedly refuse to go back and start over and spent 10 times the amount of money on maintenance. If they had just said, look, this is dumb, let's start over. We made a bad choice. let's start over from scratch, they would end up with a heck of a lot better financial gain. Okay, disposal. Okay, this is not rocket surgery here, or brain science. This is time for me to swap out my phone. What would you do? Well, I would transfer the data from my old phone to the new phone, right? I would probably take out the SD card. I would probably do a purge of the phone to make sure I don't have any sensitive data in there. And then I would probably recycle, dispose, transfer, donate my phone. Well, that's what we're talking about here. I'm getting ready to the end of life. If this system has occurred, perhaps I want to reuse the phone, or in this case, the system. So, does it have any resale value? Can I reuse this server now? Okay, that server used to be our database server, and it was top of the line. But, years have gone by, and it's no longer top of the line. Maybe I'll use it for my SharePoint server. You reuse it for something else. Purging the data. You don't ever want to turn a server over that has, just like your phone, you don't want to turn a phone over that has any type of data in it that could come back to you. Okay, so that's the disposal phase. The next section in the document has nothing to do with the SDLC, and in fact, they're talking about alternatives to using the system development lifecycle. If you recall, system development lifecycle is a kind of a waterfall approach. You do phase 1, and then you do phase 2, and then you do phase 3, and there really isn't an opportunity to kind of go back and revisit. I mean, to some degree you could. So there are some alternatives, and that is, if you do not really, really, really know what the requirements are, you really don't know, then maybe the SDLC is not the right way to go, because it's all about meeting these expectations. What if your expectations are, let's say I'm building a game, and one of the requirements is the graphics are gorgeous and it's supposed to be engaging. Well, if that's a requirement, I could say, well, I met that, and somebody else comes up and says, no, you didn't. I mean, there's no way to really define what we're talking about. So there are alternatives. The first one we're going to talk about is a system called prototyping. So prototyping is, I kind of sort of have an idea what this user interface is going to look like. I'm using user interfaces as an example, although prototyping can be used for anything. So I don't really know what it's going to look like because the user can't really tell me. In other words, they can't tell me the requirements. I go, okay, how about this? And so I show them a form, and they look at it and they go, well, yeah, that's pretty good, but you need to add this, this, and this. So you do that, and then you show it to them again, and again, and again. And this is the way to elicit from them what the requirements are. So I have seen this lots of times where the user could not articulate the requirements. Let me tell you a story. Okay, here's a story. So 10 million years ago, I was working in this organization, and we were doing a direct cutover from one system to another. And the financial people did not like that. They wanted to be able to compare the old to the new. So they came to me and said, could you write us a program that takes the data entry into the new system and produces a report so we could go through and see that everything lines up? And I went, so all you want is just a printed copy of the data entry? Because data entry was electronic, and they just wanted, and they said, yeah, that's exactly what we want. I said, okay. So I produced this printout. So I come by the next day, and I'm there, and I see them with yellow markers, and they're kind of going. I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Well, well, in order for us to check to see if the old system and new system is working the same, we need to add up, sort by this one particular field." I said, "Well, why didn't you say so?" And it's like, "Oh, well, could it do that?" I go, well, yes, of course. So, Rev 2, I sorted by this particular field. And so I come back the next day, and I see them do this with a calculator. I said, what are you doing? They said, well, now that it's sorted by this, we need to add up this column. And I said, well, why didn't you ask me? They said, oh, we didn't know we could do that. And so Rev 3 went through and totaled up a column. Now, do you see what's going on? The user could not articulate the requirements. From the first day, they could not have said, I want this sorted and I want these columns added together. They couldn't do it. And that means SDLC would have never have worked because the user could not articulate what the requirements were. And if they can't do it, the only way to do it is prototyping. I show them this. I say, is that what you want? They go, no. So I fix it. Is this what you want? Yeah, but. And so I fix it again and again and again. So prototyping is very, very good when you cannot articulate the requirements. How many times have I said that? You think maybe that's going to be important? Like maybe something that ought to be on a test or something? What do you think? Okay. There are some extra benefits to prototyping. Prototyping also gets buy-in. Okay, so let's say that you have a handful of people that you're going to and asking for like a user design, like a form. You're showing them a form and they're saying, no, move this button over here and do this, do this, do this. When it comes time to winning over the hearts and minds, remember that just from a few videos ago? When you're trying to win over the hearts and minds, you've already won these people over because they feel some sort of a sense of ownership. It's like, I helped build that form there. That screen there is mine. Well, you've got a good winner there. So, yes, making them feel like they're part of the solution is helpful. They're less likely to come back and say, well, that form sucks because they helped build the dang thing. They're not going to say it sucks. Okay, just telling you. Okay, so I like prototyping. Here's some advantages and disadvantages. I kind of like this. So, users can try the system and get some feedback. That's fantastic. Each iteration builds on the next one, and you could get lost. I mean, I'll admit, you're trying to steer it in this direction, but their user comments are actually steering it in this direction. They're making changes, and you're meeting their needs, but you're kind of wandering off someplace. You could have, one of the advantages is you could have non-working prototypes. Just saying, what do you think about this? And then, some sort of formal review. Solutions emerge. Users become more positive. Yeah, I like this. However, maybe during this path, you kind of forget to write down some stuff. So this user documentation might be incomplete because you're spending all your time making sure that they're doing the prototype right. Okay, so these are all good stuff. Now, there are different types. A throwaway prototype is one I just show them and then I'm done and I throw it away and produce a new one. A working prototype is where they can play with it. Now let me giving you a cautionary tale of a non-working prototype. Okay, I've seen this a lot, so just bear with me for yet another one of my crazy stories. So let's say, for example, you're designing a web page for somebody and they say, well, I want it to be gorgeous and I want to have greens and blues and I want, have cool, colorful this and graphical this, and so you design something for them, and you save it like in a GIF file or something to send it to them. So you email them what essentially is a screenshot of a web form and say, this is a non-working prototype, but how do you like the colors and the view and the design? And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, well, the links don't work. And you're going to have to sit back and say, no. This is a non-working prototype. I'm asking you for the design. Do you like the colors and the graphics and the layout? Well, the links don't work. It's like, a lot of people just don't get it. I mean, when you give them a prototype, you're going to have to almost say it 100 times. This is a non-working prototype. I'm asking only for, and you might even have to say, and note, the buttons do not work as this is a non-working prototype. You'll end up hoarse saying that over and over again. So, prototypes are good, but sometimes you have to kind of remind them. Okay, this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark, and we'll pick this thing up in just a few.